Good evening and thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I'm your host, Grevazio Zulu. Now, Zambia has experienced huge growth in the education sector, with the higher education being one of the most significant. Private universities and colleges have entered the market at a very rapid pace to bridge the gap that has been left by inadequate public universities and colleges. But with this growth has come challenges that include poor quality of training, lack of trained lecturers and teachers, and of course, enrollment of students that do not meet the minimum standards to enter a university or college. Now, the Higher Education Authority is making positive disruptions to the status quo that has long been accepted as the norm. Who is leading this team? Professor Kazhila Chinsembu, appointed just about 6 months ago to oversee the operations of the authority. An academician of note with over 28 years of experience in higher education management, research, and quality assurance, and he's a full professor of molecular biology and drug discovery. Well, he joins me on Sunday Interview today to discuss the vision of the Higher Education Authority and what it is doing to restore sanity in the sector. Professor, welcome to the program.
Good evening, Grevazio, and good evening, viewers.
I did attempt to try and describe you, but I want you to speak for yourself. 7 months in the job, and I want you, what do you bring to the table? What experience do you have to manage this institution that has been given to you?
So, as you rightly said, I'm a full professor of drug discovery. I have been in the walls of the university for the past 34 years. I was a lecturer at the University of Zambia for 6 years. Before that, I worked for the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology based in Nairobi, Kenya. After lecturing at UNZA for 6 years, I then moved to the University of Namibia, where I spent most of my time for 22 years. I was teaching and doing research at the University of Namibia. I rose through the ranks from lecturer to senior lecturer to associate professor and to full professor in 2020. And then I was recalled by the government to come and head the Higher Education Authority in April this year.
So before we talk about the vision, I know you must have a very focused and elaborate vision for the authority. I want you to talk about the role of the Higher Education Authority. What do you do? People need to understand your work.
So there are main two roles of the Higher Education Authority, two main pillars. The first is that the Higher Education Authority is the advisor to the Minister of Education on any aspect of higher education. So we advise the government, we develop a higher education policy, we recommend policy to the government, and we coordinate the higher education sector. So we are the nucleus and the nexus, if you like, for higher education to provide that coordination arm. The second pillar, the second mandible of the Higher Education Authority is regulation. So we police the higher education space. We register
a very huge responsibility.
A very huge responsibility, yeah. And a very difficult one, a very daunting responsibility. So we regulate, we are a regulatory body. We use the Higher Education Act of 2013 as amended again in 2021 to regulate higher education institutions in Zambia. So those are the two roles of the Higher Education Authority. Number one is to advise the government and coordinate and develop policy, and number two is to regulate.
So it's regulation, basically. Now, people must be very interested to understand what you're up to. Poached from Namibia to come back home and to head this institution, you must have a very specific vision that you want to achieve. And what are your steps? What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to see the Higher Education Authority?
So our vision is that knowledge, is the most critical ingredient for development, and that knowledge and not money is the most critical ingredient for development. So our vision is to reposition, to re-inspire and reconfigure higher education, to re-engineer it so that higher education becomes our best economic policy. We want to use higher education as a tool for economic development. We want to use higher education to double our economy, to double our GDP. And we want higher education to provide us the promise and the tools to create a future, a brighter future for our country. So our vision is to use higher education as a tool for socio-economic development. We want higher education to become the catalyst for change, to create a country and a nation that is industrialized, to create a knowledge economy. And we want higher education to become the best economic policy for our country.
Re-engineer, reconfigure, re-inspire. Those words seem to point to the fact that there are bigger challenges underlying the sector. And I want you to start by looking at those. And let's start with the public sector university. I don't want you to touch the private first. Touch the public sector. I mean, people are saying, well, the public universities are not as good as they should be or as they were in the past.
The public university sector faces daunting challenges. One of the challenges that is faced by the public university, for example, is the decaying infrastructure. The infrastructure is old and would like the public universities to be rehabilitated so that they create the physical spaces which are conducive for teaching and learning. We want the public university to create the modern infrastructure for research. We want them to have modern infrastructure for teaching and learning. In that sense, we would like them to have lecture theaters that are conducive, that are able to accommodate all the students. But as I said, the problem is that of infrastructure. We do not have the best infrastructure that we need for public universities, and would like to rehabilitate this and build new ones.
Is that the biggest problem? When you look at it now, is it infrastructure only?
That is the biggest problem. I do not want yet to rush to the problem of funding, especially funding for research. But these issues are being addressed.
You've got problems of curriculum?
Yes.
There are concerns there. Probably some curriculum has not been updated as often as it should be, and probably we're lagging behind in terms of keeping up with the trends in the industry and global trends.
That is correct. So the university has not undergone many changes in terms of curriculum transformation. And this is one of the thrusts that we are leading now. We would like the universities to undergo curriculum transformation to make their programs more relevant to the needs of our country. We would like the universities also to decolonize the curriculum, to make the curriculum more Afrocentric, to ground the curriculum into the everyday challenges that we face as a country. So
I want you to get to the grassroots when you're speaking, and you're using these big words: decolonize curriculum, transform. What do you mean? I mean, initially we had, of course, the Kobe University of Zambia, but then we have had many other new public universities that have come up. How are they failing to decolonize? Where's the challenge? How are they failing to transform? We should have seen at least transformation starting with what is new.
So in the beginning, the main aim of these institutions was just to increase access. And then later, we changed that focus in order to start focusing on quality. But in the process of increasing access and focusing on quality, we lost the focus on relevance. To tailor the course content, to tailor the degree programming into those areas that will have an impact on poverty reduction, that will have an impact on agriculture. As you know, now we are facing drought, and we would like the universities to transform their curricula so that we can produce smart crops. We would like also transformation in terms of putting up programs that focus on solar energy, for example. We would like programs that produce graduates that are able to convert knowledge into goods and services. So that is what we are trying to inform and direct the public universities to change the degree programs that they offer, to relook and rethink the course content, so that the course content brings about solutions that are able to solve the challenges that we face as a country.
Where's the problem? I did ask, where's the problem? Why are we not changing? Is it because the people managing these institutions are the people that started with these institutions that cannot see new things?
In a way, yes. That is one of the issues, that of the organizational culture. We need to change the industrial psychology as well as the organizational culture within these institutions. At the same time, we are coming from an era of weak regulation. The Higher Education Authority was not really playing that pivotal role to direct these institutions into transformation. So we are now able to provide that voice because we now have a transformational leadership. As you know, everything rises and falls on leadership. So with the change of leadership, we would like our institutions to focus on those critical areas of transformation.
Two things. You've spoken about lack of infrastructure. You've spoken about transformation. Are you directing the universities? How do you monitor this, apart from wishing that they could change, wish they could change the syllabus?
Yes.
How are you going to ensure that this is implemented?
That is
For
right.
infrastructure, how do you come in to help these universities to transform their infrastructure to modern day university infrastructure?
So I started work, for example, on the 22nd of April, 2024. And on the 25th of April, we had a meeting with all the vice chancellors from public universities at Mulungushi. That is the day, just 2 days later after I started working to this position, we directed the public universities to embark on this process of transformation. And we did let them know of the agency for transformation. So that directive, as you said, it's a directive that has been issued.
Do they have deadlines when they have to report back to you and say, well, we've transformed? This is what we have.
Yes. So
are you part of the approval processes as they transform?
Exactly.
Do they have the independence to transform without your heavy hand hovering over them?
So the message for transformation, the directive for transformation has already gone out, and in the next year or so, they'll be undertaking curriculum review and curriculum transformation. Secondly, we have also requested the universities to submit to us their estimates for infrastructure, because we would like to focus the attention of the Minister of Education on the need for infrastructure rehabilitation. So the reports for infrastructure development are already being developed, and we are going now to focus the attention of the government on rehabilitating infrastructure in our public universities.
There's exponential growth in the higher education subsector, and if you like to say that, I want you to give us the status, the numbers. How many public universities do we have? How many private universities do we have?
So we have overall now about 160 higher education institutions under our oversight. We have about 9 public universities, and then we have about 70 university colleges, and then about 80 colleges. And the reason is that with the amendment of the Higher Education Act in 2021, all the higher education institutions that were scattered across several ministries, like Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, all the higher education institutions that were dotted around different professional bodies, like the Teaching Council, as well as the Health Professions Council, the engineers, all these are now under the oversight of the Higher Education Authority. So we are talking about 160 plus colleges and universities under our regulatory oversight.
That's a huge number. Private universities.
Yes, that's right.
Private colleges.
It's a very huge number, and it makes it very difficult for us to police all these institutions. So what we are doing now, one of the thrusts that we are engaged in at the moment is to restructure the Higher Education Authority to create internal capacity and strength so that the Higher Education Authority can decentralize into regions. So a few months ago, we were undergoing restructuring with the help of our Cabinet Office to restructure the Higher Education Authority so that we can create regional offices in order to create capacity to police the higher education space.
When does this start?
We hope that it would start in 2025, but because of budgetary constraints, it will not start in 2025. Perhaps it will start in 2026.
So you've got all these private universities dotted around, and others probably came up in a very suspicious manner. Have you done an audit to see who's standing where? Are they properly recognized as universities? Are they offering the proper training? Are they having qualified lecturers who are fit to be in those universities?
So yes, we do conduct annual audits. The law provides that we conduct annual institutional audits. So every year an institution must be audited, and when we do audit, we check whether the institution has the correct number and quality of lecturers, whether they have the correct teaching space, whether they have the laboratories, whether they have the libraries, and also whether they are following some of the quality aspects that we desire to make sure that the education they're providing is of the correct standards. So the law provides now for annual audits, and every institution must undergo an annual audit.
So you're just based at Lusaka, and when you're talking about an annual audit, that would take you probably 2 years to move from one institution to another, apart from receiving just the actual reports. Meaning currently you're relying on I would call it a desk audit?
No, we do.
Based on
we
submissions made by the...
We do physical inspections. Although our capacity is limited, but we are trying our best to make sure that every institution undergoes a physical inspection during the audit.
What are the major challenges you're seeing? I know you've spoken about the public sector. Now let's speak about the private sector, private universities and colleges. What challenges are they facing? Which ones are the biggest weaknesses that you've noted in the system?
First of all, Grevazio, the government supports the provision of higher education by the private sector. So it is government policy that we encourage private sector participation in the provision of higher education. And the 8th National Development Plan has also made it clear that we need the private sector to participate in the provision of higher education. And the reason is that we do not have enough space in public higher education institutions to accommodate all our school leavers. And also because the participation of the private sector is a way of cost sharing. It brings about cost sharing. So within that understanding of private sector participation comes the need for regulation, because we cannot leave higher education entirely to the whims of the private sector, because as you know, the private sector is mainly driven by profit and not national interest. So we must have that clear understanding, and it is within that framework that while we can encourage private sector participation and competition, we also need public sector driven regulation and coordination. And that is where the Higher Education Authority comes in, to safeguard public interest and to make sure that the education that the private sector is providing is of the correct standard. And so our role, and this is where one of the weaknesses of the private sector is that we many of the institutions that were registered many years ago were registered under a weak regulatory framework. So you see a lot of corner shop universities. There are a lot of corner shop universities. At every corner you see a university, which we have now downgraded.
Briefcase universities. You're calling corner shop?
Yes.
Do we have the briefcase ones, that mobile universities?
Perhaps they are there, but maybe they are evading, they are running away from us, I don't know. But we have a lot of corner shop universities, which we have now downgraded to university colleges. And this has been recognized in the 8th National Development Plan, that we are coming from an era of weak regulation. So our role now as Higher Education Authority is to strengthen the regulatory framework and to strengthen our surveillance and to strengthen our inspections to make sure that the higher education space is tightly regulated. So we are now going to make sure that while government policy, yes, it supports the provision of higher education, but we want to make sure that the weakness in terms of poor quality higher education is cancelled out. And we want to police the quality assurance process to make sure that...
You may need the public to help you police, so you police together. I want you to explain. Yes, if there's a parent sitting out there, they want to know, what's the difference? Am I taking my child to university? Am I taking my child to a university college?
That is right.
Do you want to explain to them so that they basically understand where are they taking their children?
Yes, the public should always check with us. This information is available on our website. They can call us, but they need to check that they are sending their children to institutions of higher education that have been accredited by the Higher Education Authority. Remember that there are a lot of charlatans out there. There are a lot of fake higher education institutions out there. But it is incumbent upon the students and the parents to make sure that they are taking their children to higher education institutions that are accredited.
What's the difference between a university college and a university?
So
the viewer may want to understand that.
Yes, so a university college can only offer a diploma and a degree. They will not offer a master's and a PhD. A master's and a PhD can only be offered by a university.
That's a major difference. Now,
yes.
We've got, you've identified one of the weaknesses as corner shop universities. I'll go deeper into that. You've talked about masters, and we've seen universities that spring up. A few years later, they're offering PhD. Are you controlling that?
Yes, now we are controlling that. And one of the aspects that, one of the mechanisms these institutions were using is the mechanism of affiliation. A college would open today, and then they would say they are now affiliated. They have affiliated themselves to a university in the US, or
abroad, yeah.
And then they start offering PhDs. But now we are controlling the affiliation process. So all the affiliations now must be registered with us. So that is one mechanism. The other is that we are not registering a university straight away. You cannot register a university straight away. In the past, someone would just come and register a university straight away, and then they'll start offering degrees up to PhD. But now the initial point of registration is only for a university college. When the university college runs for 5 years, then they can apply to become a university if they meet all the parameters. So it is now tight. The path to the registration of a university is becoming narrower and narrower because of the new regulations that we have brought. You've
put in place. There's an issue of recruitment or enrollment of students that don't meet the required standards. It's no grade 12 certificate, and some of them are doing dual studies, GCE and one for the degree. It's a very common thing currently.
It is.
Is there a problem with that?
It is. It's a big problem.
Can someone study for
and we saw this, for example, during the recruitment of teachers, the 30,000, also during the recruitment of the health workers. many graduates, many have degrees, but they do not have the 5 O levels. But the law is very clear. You must have the requisite 5 O levels, and this should include English, maths, and science. So it's a regulation. I must mention that we must follow regulations. And if we start to waive these regulations, we begin to create anarchy, and we begin to create lawlessness within the sector. So the provision for a student to do GCE should be done before they are enrolled into the university college. And that is very important.
Where is the problem? Can somebody do both?
No, you can't.
It's an easy thing to do. For a person studying, they can do their GCE, or they're focusing on their first year.
No, first of all, they should not even be enrolled in the first place, because the law is the law. The law is the law. The regulation is the regulation.
Do you wish the law was amended?
Not at all, not at all, because we want to enforce the aspect of minimum entry requirement. Remember that if you do not meet the minimum entry requirement, there's still another path for you to go into TVET, and we need skills for plumbing, for mechanics, for bricklaying, for TV repair, for radio repair. So there's another path for those that do not meet the entry requirements, and we need individuals to move into the other direction. So the obsession for degrees is what is creating this evading of the minimum entry requirements, and that is illegal.
You're talking about obsession for degrees, and somebody will probably talk about you in the same vein as obsession for the past system, where education must be hard. It must be very hard for you to get a degree. Shouldn't it be easy for, in modern days, shouldn't it be very easy for you to get a degree, for you to acquire the knowledge and then use it?
There was a misunderstanding. When we said, for example, that now it has become, we are worried that it is easy to obtain a degree.
Shopping mall?
We did not mean that we should make it hard to get
very
a degree.
hard.
No. That is not the meaning. The meaning is that it has become easy now to get degrees because of there is this fraudulence. There's this fraudulent. There are fraudulent processes. There is academic corruption, for example. There is the 50+1, where a student that has sat for an exam and they have clearly failed, but the institution do not want to fail the student, and they give 50+1. So it now becomes easy. The throughput is easy because the process, the examination process, is fraudulent. And that is the meaning of that statement. Not that the institutions should make it difficult for students to study or to get the degree. It is not in that context. The context, the correct context, is that these institutions, many of them, they thrive on enrollment. They thrive on the numbers because they collect fees from these students. And none of them would like to let a student that has failed to exclude school. At the same time, many of them are tampering with the examination process to the extent that everyone is able to pass.
So how are you managing that? It's very difficult to manage. Yeah, very difficult for you to go through the entire register and know that this person did not go through, was not enrolled without minimum qualifications. Very difficult for you to know that a student was not favored to go through the exam, and the 50+1 you're talking about, the academic fraud. How do you manage that? Because it's really sitting with the universities and not with you.
Yes, so while we do not want to micromanage higher education institutions, remember we conduct audits, and it is during the auditing process that we are able to pick out these aspects. That it's during the audit that we are able to determine these flaws that are taking place within the systems.
What are the minimum standards to set up a university? Minimum standards that the university should have so that everybody knows that, well, I'm having quality education here?
So we first of all, now to set up a university, we want you, for example, to have a piece of land, and we want you to build a physical campus. After that, we want you to have the correct corporate structure. There must be a council, there must be a senate, and there must be vice chancellor. The vice chancellor should have a PhD, should have had this PhD for more than 10 years. There must be a deputy vice chancellor for academic affairs, and now recently there must be a deputy vice chancellor for research and innovation. After that, you must have qualified lecturers, and for you to teach at a degree level, you must have at least a master's, and for you to teach at postgraduate level, you must have a PhD, and you must have physical facilities, lecture theaters, laboratories, as well as libraries. So we have all these parameters that are requisites to the establishment of a university.
These are, some of them are stringent.
Very stringent.
Having land. Why would you want somebody to have land? Can they rent structures?
Previously, yes, but we want them to...
Why can they rent structures? That's prohibitive. The requirement is prohibitive that they must build. Why do you want them to build?
Because we would like them to build a campus that is conducive for teaching and learning.
You can rent a campus which is conducive.
Yes, and many of them, for example, were renting a building near a bar. There will be music from this neighboring facility, and then next is a university, and we don't want that.
But then you have no control over that, because the people that issue titles and land are different. You may have land, but then a bar can move next to you.
Yes, so we want someone that sets up a facility that is customized and that is designed for teaching and learning as a university, and that will not happen if you are just renting, because you probably rent a place that was designed to be a shop, or you would rent a building that was designed to be a clinic, or you would rent a building that was designed to be a garage. We don't want that. So we would like someone who comes to us to say they want to set up a university. They must find land and they must build.
But isn't that a cake?
No, because we would like this facility to be state of the art.
Because I mean, why are you imposing what people should do?
That is why
they may just have a school that does not really
that may
not need laboratories.
That is why we are
and then they may have
regulator.
a structure which is suitable for that, and then you want them to customize. They don't want a customized building.
No,
maybe it meets their standards.
It should meet the standards, quite okay.
But you must own it.
Yes, ownership is important because we want the facility to be customized and designed for teaching and learning.
Well, how big is the problem of people not having proper entry qualifications? What are you doing?
It is quite huge. And recently, this problem has resurfaced, not just with the Higher Education Authority, but also, for example, with the Teaching Council of Zambia and many other institutions. And when we did an audit, for example, in Eastern Province, we found 16 institutions where the enrollment of students without the minimum entry requirements was very rampant. And so we have taken measures to make sure that the institutions put in place a mechanism where this problem will be corrected.
So you have it here in Lusaka, even where universities offer you a place before you even get your grade 12 results.
Yes, and that is worrying, and that is not supposed to be like that. And institutions that do that, if we find out, we will deregister these institutions.
So you did an audit in Eastern Province, and you didn't do an audit in Lusaka. Did you do it? That's where the problem should be very big.
Yes, but even here in Lusaka, we have done audits, we've done inspections, and the problem is there. I just gave Eastern Province as an example.
Let's move on. I know you want to really dignify the education and the status of it. And is it true or correct that you don't want traditional rulers now to wear gowns? Is that a correct position?
That was
on a lighter note?
On a lighter note. Let me say that we respect our Royal Highnesses, and I respect my chief, Chief Ishima, Chief Ishindi. And I like.
Were you threatened?
No, I like it when my chief wears their traditional regalia. I would be very amused if I saw my chief wearing a doctoral hat and a doctoral graduation gown. So on a lighter note, we think perhaps the graduation gown should remain where it should be, and that is at the graduation ceremonies.
And not in the palaces.
And also, I'm a strong believer in indigenous knowledge systems. And we believe that we have enough value within our indigenous knowledge systems for our chiefs to wear the correct traditional attires. That will bring a lot of respect to our indigenous knowledge systems, and it will bring a lot of respect to our cultural heritage, and it will bring a lot of respect to our chiefs if they wear traditional dress.
Okay, well, let's move on. You gave a speech addressing higher education general regulations of 2024. What are the most significant changes there? And I know these are new regulations that you're trying to enforce.
So the most significant changes there, as I said, number one, is that you cannot register a university straight away. You must register it first as a university college, and then it should run for 5 years before you can reapply for it to be recognized as a university. Then secondly, the regulations now create a one basket regulatory regime, whereby all the colleges that were dotted all over different ministries and professional bodies are now under the regulatory oversight of the Higher Education Authority. And the other notable regulation is that now we do have to register the affiliations that institutions enter into.
Now, the new regulation introduced new fees, and these have also been a source of debate. Many feel this is placing another financial burden on families and people. How do you justify these fees that you've introduced, and how do you explain them?
Yeah, Grevazio, knowledge is expensive, and these fees provide the premium that we place on quality assurance.
Don't they negate on the aspect of free education?
No, not at all. So these fees are the premium for the quality assurance that we must provide. So actually these fees protect the families and the students to make sure that the Higher Education Authority has the strength and the teeth to police the higher education space. As you know, there are a lot of charlatans, but we need to create capacity. We need to strengthen the Higher Education Authority to police the higher education space. So these fees provide the assurance that we are going to protect the interest of the families and of the students to make sure that they receive the correct type of higher education, so that the fees provide the assurance, and they do not in any way subtract from the policy of free education, because we would like this education that the students receive to be of the correct quality. And for us to do that, we must have the resources to undertake inspections, to undertake accreditation of learning programs, and to undertake audits. So we need the resources to be able to have the strength and the capacity to police.
Isn't this just a fundraising venture?
Not at all.
I mean, how will you ensure accountability and transparency?
Accountability is ensured.
Most of the time, these fees tend to go to maintaining your allowances as staff, maintaining your salaries as staff, giving you more workshops, more training and travel? And
not at all. We are a statutory body. We are grant aided. We receive a grant from the government every month, and we are under the financial Public Finance Management Act. So we have, my role is to ensure that there is accountability in the use of these public resources and to protect these public resources so that they are not abused or misused.
I know you've spoken about some of these, but I'll still ask you again. Are there measures within these regulations that specifically address quality improvement in the education delivery, and how you will monitor this to ensure it's adhered to the core?
Yes, so the new regulations, as I said, provide for annual institutional audits, and these are very important because we go in to audit these institutions. We'll be conducting an audit at the Copperbelt University this week, and then in December we'll be conducting an audit at the University of Zambia. So when we go into audit, we check all the academic processes, we check teaching and learning, we check physical facilities, we check the library, we check the laboratories. I know nowadays you find the institutions doing what they call dry labs. That is wrong. We want students to do the actual lab work, not to do dry labs. And then we check for examination process, and we check for other policies that exist in the university. So all these aspects in the end will point towards improved quality assurance in the higher education institution.
You spoke out of big numbers, 80, 70, 160 total. Do we have enough manpower, human resource, in terms of lecturers?
No, not at all.
To run these universities? Or we probably have some lecturers walking around and not really delivering the education that is supposed to be delivered on time.
And that is actually one of the problems, that many of these private institutions of higher learning, they do not have the correct caliber of teaching staff, and they do not have the numbers. Many of them are also part-time, and we are keeping an eagle's eye on this aspect because there's a lot of moonlighting within these institutions. And the reason partly is that the salaries being offered by private education institutions are very low. One of the institutions that was at our office last week, they are saying they pay 10,000 kwacha gross for a lecturer. Perhaps the net will be 6,000, and we said that is low for a lecturer. So that has created a problem. The problem of remuneration impacts on the availability of the correct teaching staff in these institutions. And so you find lecturers are moving from one institution to the other in order to make ends meet. But we would like these institutions to have full-time academic staff, and their numbers should be adequate in order to have the correct lecturer-student ratio, and that is lacking at the moment. But it is an aspect that we do monitor, and we hope that we can have compliance towards the desired standards of teaching staff.
You're talking about moonlighting, talking about lack of lecturers, and then this tallies with the lack of adequate learning time for the students. Are you monitoring this?
Yes.
Because I have to teach 5 universities. Probably one class will probably have, instead of 40 hours of learning, they'll probably have 10 hours or 15 hours of learning, and they will have done their course.
Yes, so that ultimately impacts on the time
quality.
And quality of teaching and learning. As you know, the caliber of teaching of academic staff is what ultimately determines the quality of the graduates that we we get out of these institutions. So we would like the teaching staff to be of the correct qualifications. We would like them to spend the required number of hours for teaching, and would like them to provide the students with the correct resources for learning, and would like them to have the correct materials, as well, modern equipment for research, as well as for laboratory activities, for experiments. So all these aspects of teaching and learning must meet the minimum standards that should produce the correct graduate. But that, at the moment, is still a Herculean task. But it is something that we would like to address.
You're speaking very tough and exhuming skeletons, I could say. One of the issues you've raised is, look, there are too many private universities and colleges offering medicine training in medical fields, and that they're not capable of that, surgery. And you've also raised one major concern of public universities. You're questioning the quality of some of the PhD programs sponsored by donors.
Yes. So the first issue is that in many countries that we have benchmarked, public education is directed to the fields of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and medicine also falls in that. And that the private sector focuses on non-STEM, for example, business, law, and so on. I think that approach brings some comfort in a way that if you entrust medicine and surgery to the private institution, perhaps our nation will pay a heavy price.
Nation will perish.
So that is the microcosm, and that is the prism through which I view this issue. That the private sector, the niche for the private sector is perhaps in the fields that are non-STEM, and that the public sector, the government, should take more interest in providing education in the fields of STEM. And that is what actually our 8th National Development Plan states, that government will play a critical role in STEM. Even at the Higher Education Loans and Scholarship Board, most of the loans that they are providing are for students that are pursuing studies in the fields of STEM. So that is the dichotomy, that would like private sector to have a niche in the non-STEM, and would like the public sector to focus on STEM.
Is that a wish? Or something you're working to achieve?
Yes, let us call it a wish, and let us call it our mission and our vision that we can have.
Do you hope to reverse this? Because I mean, as you speak, everybody's probably visualizing, seeing all these nurses, nursing schools, and universities around the corners with all these students being trained in these.
Our role now is to create conversation around these issues. Our role is to bring a voice to highlight these issues, to create conversation that will evolve into policy. So what we are doing at the moment, and we have seen that the past week,
raising the dust.
We are provoking public dialogue so that we can shine the spotlight on higher education, so that the nation will feel that without the correct higher education, we will not develop. That without the correct type of higher education, will be groping in the dark, and that without the correct type of higher education, we are doing a disservice to ourselves as a nation. So as a higher education authority, we would like to provoke and encourage public dialogue to bring higher education into the center. And the reason is because we want higher education to create a brighter future for ourselves as a country. We would like higher education to become the best economic policy. We would like higher education to double our economy. We would like higher education to double our GDP. We can only do that if we create the correct policy environment. And the correct policy environment can only come out of discussions such as the ones we are now provoking.
PhD sponsored, questionable PhD.
So again, the donor-driven PhD, and when I was a young lecturer at the University of Zambia, we used always to joke about this. At that time, we had a lot of scholarships from a lot of donors. These scholarships are good, but we would like these PhDs to generate new knowledge that is relevant to our country. We would like the PhD to generate knowledge that will give our nation the competitive intelligence for us to be able to compete with other nations. And so we think that during a PhD, it is good if the student comes back home to conduct research here in Zambia on a local problem in order to produce solutions, knowledge solutions that will be able to solubilize and to solve the challenges that we face as a country.
As we close, I want you to look to the future, and I want you to tell us what you see there. What's your long-term goal of Zambia's higher education landscape?
Look, at the moment, the higher education sector is in retreat. Our system of higher education is in decline. Our universities, if they are not yet an accident to happen, then perhaps they are on the precipice of catastrophe, because many of them, in my view, have not.
You're being nice. Many of them should be closed.
No. Many of them need capacity. We need to capacitate these institutions. So we have put the entire system of higher education under the microscope. And we would like to disrupt the status quo so that higher education can be repositioned and re-inspired to become the engine for socio-economic development. So our role now is to, one, create capacity for higher education to be re-inspired so that it can create the future that we need for ourselves as a country. That higher education should give us the promise of a brighter future, and that higher education should give us the tools to create a knowledge economy for us to fight poverty, for us to produce food, for us to solve the problem of load shedding, and for us to double the economy by the year 2031.
Professor, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you very much, Grevazio.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was Professor Kazhila Chinsembu, Director General at the Higher Education Authority. I'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewers.